Now it's time for our energy update with Dan McTeague, president of Canadians for Affordable Energy.
Well, hello, Teresa. We're the midsummer. Gas prices seem to be moving in only a small direction, one way up and then one way down by about 1 or 2 cents a liter. So really, we haven't seen much activity on the gasoline side. Of course, gas prices are about 30 cents a liter less than what they were that last year. 21 cents of that is due to the elimination for the time being of the carbon tax, the consumer carbon tax. The second, of course, is the Canadian dollar. The Canadian dollar is a factor, but the barrel of oil was $82 a barrel this time last year. We're about $68 a barrel. So that differential has a lot to do with why we're paying a lot less than we did this time last year. I know some people are still complaining, but you have even more to complain about. I mentioned the carbon tax because there was a story by a Blacklock's reporter that pointed out that you're paying about up to 13 cents a liter for the second carbon tax. In fact, it's going to go a lot closer to 20 cents a liter by 2030. And right now, right across the country, diesel and gasoline, except for British Columbia, and I'll explain that in a second, has with it about a 4 cent to 5 cent carbon tax. It's hidden. It's buried in the wholesale price of gasoline. I see it because I do the calculations every day for the gas prices. But in British Columbia, of course, it's been around for a while. It's called the BCLCFS, the British Columbia Low Carbon Fuel Standard. And it's almost 18.9 cents a liter based on $450 credit for carbon. So refiners have to buy that. Costs them about 4 cents for every $100 of carbon credit. 4.5 times 100 gives you 110, gives you about 18 cents a liter plus GST. So a little higher in Ontario, which is HST. So get ready for it. The Liberals say they got rid of the carbon tax. They might have thought they did, but they did not get rid of the second carbon tax, the clean fuel standard, which I lamented back in 2020. Well, it's here and it's starting to impact you at pumps, and not just gasoline, but diesel, which is more intense and requires a little bit more carbon credits that refiners have to purchase. So they're passing it on to you because the technology doesn't exist to remove inert CO2, because that's, of course, the only obsession the government has is that form of pollution. And it's not pollution. It's actually, part of the process on which we breathe and which we live. Without CO2, Earth and planet dies. So nevertheless, I won't go down that rabbit hole, but to simply express the fact that you're not carbon tax free, and you'll continue to see the federal government use this hidden industrial, low clean fuel standard to offset what it has lost now in terms of the consumer carbon tax, given it was universally unpopular. Now, across the country, we haven't seen, as I mentioned earlier, much in the way of any gas price hiccups. That is true of gasoline, but it's not true of diesel. Diesel is moving up very quickly. The demand for diesel is high. The supply is low. And, United States, which boasts having a lot, this fracking revolution, can produce a lot of light, tight shale oil, but it doesn't make diesel. It makes gasoline. It can't make diesel. That's why we need more Canadian oil, heavy oil, into the U.S. market. Otherwise, the U.S. will starve. And I don't mean, in terms of fuel for vehicles, but you can't run your aviation industry, your rail industry, your transportation, heavy trucks, your mining, your farming, and other equipment without diesel. Diesel is the global workhorse as far as fuels are concerned, and without it, the Americans need a lot more Canadian oil, not less. And of course, the United States produces about 13 million barrels a day, but they consume about 21. More than half of that is met by Canadian oil, and of course, I'm sure they would like to get a little bit more. That might be actually a way in which the federal government can present itself and say, yeah, there's a lot of things the Trump administration may want to do to Canada, but one of the things it cannot ignore, cannot do without, is our heavy oil. And U.S. refiners have already reconfigured, spending billions of dollars in advanced cokers, and of course, having spent all that money in order to take heavier slates of oil because they can do more with it. So that's an important trade point that is often overlooked in all this trade discussion. And of course, next 2 weeks, we get that increase of 35% on all non-USMCA CUSMA products, or what hasn't been negotiated so far. So that will have an impact. Notwithstanding, the impact will more likely be on the Canadian dollar. A weakening Canadian dollar versus US greenback means higher prices for everything, including fuel. Right now, Teresa, you're looking at a scenario where it costs about 23 to 24 cents a liter because it takes 137 plus Canadian pennies to buy $1 US. all of our commodities priced in U.S. terms, whether they're made here or not, means that our purchase power is out the window. So anybody who thinks that blocking pipelines are number one export and finding cute ways to stop automotive by going into heavy debt with the investment in what people don't want, what the Americans won't have to buy, electric vehicles, undermining our manufacturing. All this really means that we need to get our act together and put aside the fact that it's not 2050 anymore. We have 2025. The reality is that net zero doesn't work. It has harmed Canada. It hurts Canadians, and it's certainly going to hurt our fiscal and our monetary outlook over the foreseeable future. So I know it's a lot to say in a very short period of time, but on the basis of gasoline, but there's a reason why we created affordableenergy.ca, and the site is to bring awareness to the bad public policies that the government has made. And I know about public policy. I spent 18 years as a Liberal member of Parliament. Some of that, by the way, as a Privy Councillor, so working with Cabinet. And a lot of that, during that time, we always try to find ways to make sure we could balance the budget, make sure that we had an economy that was strong and for the future. Right now, we've traded that, we've given that away, and we've certainly allowed energy prices, whether that be oil, gas, or that be the cost of hydro, to go through the roof, or at least in places like mine in Ontario here, where prices are going for hydro may be stable, but we're paying $10 to $11 billion a year in subsidies to make sure the green energy impact doesn't hit us fully. So although I've gone from gasoline to diesel, the outlook for this week is maybe a bit of an increase, 2 to 3 cents a liter on average across Canada for gasoline, about a 5 to 7 cent a liter increase for diesel and home heating fuel as much for Atlantic Canada. So that means that you may want to start filling up a little earlier rather than waiting until this time next week. That's it for this week, Teresa. We'll be back at you next week.